Big Brother USA United Nations Chapter 3, prequel to Dream Sequence 2 Alpha at Seoul, South Korea Ep.2, 01 April 2021. A shit or go out to hunt for food. Everything was contaminated, including the very air that we breathed. The corpses started to decompose. We had to do something, or else the odor from the rotten corpses would kill all the survivors. I and several others vomited and remained nauseated by the disgusting odor and the appalling stench. The poisonous black clouds overhead covered the entire peninsula, accompanied by dust and smoke in the stratosphere. Already we were seeing changes to the climate, which was progressively inching toward the weather of nuclear winter. 72 hours prior we had early summer weather. The fallout over Seoul was almost complete, with more than 95% of the radiation from the blast having been emitted. The inhabitants of Seoul found themselves engulfed in black smoke, fog, and an assortment of toxic chemicals as the city had been reduced to ashes. Noonday looked like midnight, and temperatures had dropped significantly. The Seoul government, for all intents and purposes, had vanished in a puff of smoke, the smoke blown away by the 70 to 140 mph winds, with Seoul's monumental infrastructure reduced to debris, and in flames 50 years of industrial progress reduced to ashes within the space of several seconds. Of the 300 service members assigned to the convoy of buses, 100 had died seconds after the initial thermonuclear explosions, with another 100 dying a day or two after. The remaining 100 now suffered radiation sickness with undeniable fallout-related symptoms such as burns, with the condition of the victims ranging from extremely critical to near death. Many of these people were experiencing damage to the central nervous system caused by the radiation. A handful of survivors were convinced they would die soon from lack of medical aid, lack of food, emotional distress, and worsening injuries. The black rain and clouds of smoke from the northern regions of Seoul spread, releasing a huge amount of toxins into the atmosphere, along with millions of tons of dust, an incalculable amount of fumes from burnt plant life, and millions of tons of smoke from metropolises, municipalities, and suburban, urban, and rural communities, from the destroyed buildings and infrastructure, including roads and railways. Some survivors gathered up enough strength to build temporary fallout shelters. The buses, after the fires had burned out, seemed to be reasonable accommodations for the time being. Once that was done, we had to do something about the corpses. The stench had gotten stronger. The survivors, 60 of the 100 who remained, were deteriorating rapidly, experiencing coughing, vomiting, nausea, unexplained sweating, hair loss, and leukopenia. Death was on its way. We took a short break from digging and sat with our backs against a burned-out bus. Several others and I curled into protective balls more like the fetal position and covered ourselves with fallout blankets. Speaking with urgency, we contemplated death. Half my hair had fallen out, and I was now coughing hoarsely. I looked at the others and wondered if we had dug our own graves. I faced skyward and saw clouds of smoke floating across the peninsula. The thick black clouds covered much of the atmosphere, a large portion of them were toxic. The sunlight was hidden behind the mushroom-shaped clouds, with however many cubic miles of dust and smoke circulating rapidly over the Korean peninsula and moving toward neighboring countries. The air current played a vital role in distributing the fallout. It seemed winter was on its way, along with blustery meteorological conditions. All I wanted to do was to earn enough money for college, said an 17-year-old white USAF trooper named Anderson. He coughed out blood. A black female, a Navy trooper named Hills, rocked back and forth and occasionally vomited. The vomit wet her half-burned, filthy clothes. Laughing, she said, "I wonder who's going to the Super Bowl this year." I contemplated the violent wind and the uncharacteristic meteorological patterns. Daylight hadn't appeared, the sunbeams unable to penetrate the thick black clouds or the smoke. The temperature dropped another 7 degrees with endless minicyclones tearing through the inhospitable peninsula, carrying toxic thermonuclear compounds and substances to every corner of South Korea, then onto other parts of the world. I coughed and felt a severe pain in my back. I stroked my hair, and a few strands fell out. Had I kept my original pledge to my parents to become a college math instructor, I would not have been in such a predicament now with no remedy. I had no one to blame but myself. The survivors from our convoy were experiencing food poisoning, dysentery, and typhoid. The general population suffered the same. Radiation sickness had left all of us, including me, vulnerable and defenseless since the radiation had damaged our immune systems. Since the time the 11 megaton nuclear bombs detonated at the midpoint between Seoul and Pyongyang, the ozone layer around Asia had been depleted by 9%. At certain pinpoints across the Korean peninsula, this effect was aggravated. Starvation and sickness resulting from exposure to the high levels of radiation were in competition. Which of the two forms of death would claim more lives, both human and livestock? The weather over the peninsula flushed out the grunge and dust. It was now the inverse of typical summer weather with 60 degrees temperatures, the result of unknown amounts of nitrogen xide released into the upper atmosphere. 96 hours since the detonations, temperatures had risen to 90 degrees. 3 soldiers came and handed me and some comrades 2 shovels. It was their turn to rest and our turn to dig. We limped over to the hole. I stole a glance to my right and saw fallen comrades exposed to the fallout. The stench had gotten stronger. Every inch of our bodies and clothes reeked with the truly vile odor. In the grave that we were digging, 3 of us fanned out and found our spots to dig alongside others. The smoke and dark clouds above moved slowly over the infected landscape, which was now smoldering. We began to dig in silence, approaching our work without ardor. Then again, what soldier would be happy about digging a mass grave for his comrades, or, for that matter, for himself? I coughed out blood. Taking a breather, I inhaled another lungful of impure air. I was in a rapid course to meet with death. More strands of my hair fell out. A comrade came by and took my shovel, and another escorted me over to the burned-out bus serving as a temporary fallout shelter. The one who had escorted me over poured fresh drinking water into my mouth and gave me another shot of Delamune, an antiviral agent. She wiped the sweat off my face and studied my eyes, telling me to get some rest and stay inside. She gave me 2 saltines and some water. I ate and drank, and then I rested. Big Brother USA United Nations Chapter 3, Prequel to Dream Sequence 2 Alpha at Seoul, South Korea Episode 2, 01 April 2021.